I love my job in Fargo Public Schools, and being the superintendent for Fargo has been the greatest honor of my life, and there's no doubt about that. So I always tell people, what's the KPI that you're actually trying to work with, and then let's backwards plan from there to create the best strategy accordingly. Because if I make innovation the goal, then I'm trying to promote the practice versus the outcome the practice is going to get to.
Welcome back to the Powercast. We are here at AASA conference in New Orleans, and I'm joined by my colleague, Jeff Pelzel, former superintendent in the great state of California. And we have a northern guest, my first discussion with a North Dakota superintendent and friend from Texas. You know, I got to throw that in there.
Yep.
Dr. Rupak Gandhi, Superintendent of Fargo Public Schools. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, you know, the first thing that we want to know is a little bit about your educational journey and some of the places that you worked, and eventually some of your transitions that you made, and really the why behind those.
Absolutely. You know, when you start getting into your why, it can get a little lengthy, so try to be brief or provide some brevity for the purpose of the podcast. But a very non-traditional journey. I didn't expect to go into education. I actually was law school bound. I went to Texas A&M, part of a law program, thinking that I was going to end up at South Texas College of Law in Houston. And, you know, I was doing that, and I was in college enjoying living my best life, and got approached my senior year by an organization known as Teach for America about, hey, would you be interested in going into education? And it said, what a great way to save money for law school for a couple of years and boost my law school resume and go into education. So decided to do that as a 2-year stint, and Teach for America placed me in Houston Independent School District. My parents lived in Houston. I went to high school in Houston, so it made sense. My parents said, if you want to save money, stay at home for a couple of years, you know, while you work until you go to law school. Thing is that 6 months into the job, it was 2007 when I got placed, but that's when all the hurricanes were hitting New Orleans and Louisiana, and Houston had that big influx of students, and just seeing the lack of male role models in some of my students' lives just really made me get a deeper passion for education and realize that that's where I want to stay. So decided to stay in education, but it wasn't easy. I grew up a first-generation Indian American. My dad moved here in 1969 with part of LBJ's Higher Education Act. So a very strong work ethic. So for a traditional Indian family that is not used to seeing someone give up med school or law school to go into education, it wasn't the most well-received, right? So,
wait, hold on. Okay, when you knew and then you were going to drop it on the parents, just tell me, like, how did you do it? Like, was it tough?
It's been a road to recovery with the relationship with my parents. So let's just put it that way. And it's been talked about, and we're good now. But it's just, you know, we're all a product of our experiences. And my parents, for them, Rick, you know, because I met Rick in Houston Independent School District. And at that time, majority of the teachers were coming in from alternative certification as a second career. So it just public education, while as a merit, it was very highly respected. It just wasn't seen as a more lucrative profession, especially when you live in a large urban center like Houston. So for my parents, they really thought I was giving up a successful career. So that always just gave me this chip on my shoulder. So that's really why
that was not their vision for you, right? That wasn't their American dream for you.
That was not their American dream for me. So I always had a chip on my shoulder that I had to prove to them that I'm going to do. So I think that's why I pursued administration, and I really thought I want to be a principal, and that's where I'm going to be. So, you know, I taught for 3 years, and then I was given a job that no one else wanted in the district, which was a turnaround high school assistant principal as part of this Apollo 20 program for Houston IC. And literally they told us that after I got the job, they're like, hey, we'll place you somewhere else in the district if you want, because this school will be shut down by the state the following year. It was Lee High School at the time. It's now called Wisdom High School. They said because graduation is such a lagging indicator and you're not going to meet the accountability metrics to get out of improvement required status in Texas. We had 2 assistant principals decide to leave and take another job with the district. We had our my captain moment at that time, and the rest of us decided to stay, and we actually we paid the payment. We spent that summer going to kids' houses, apartments, basically popping up a night school, recovery school, doing everything we can. So we made sure that we weren't impacted by the kids that had already dropped out, brought them back, had an opportunity to work with them. And that was where my role was. I was a non-traditional principal. So I had 250 kids on my caseload that were 9th graders that were more than 14 and had less than 6 credits. And so worked with them to get them back. And we had some success. And when you have some success in a large district like Houston, you kind of get pigeonholed into being that turnaround person. That was the year that Lee High School got a tremendous amount of success from Apollo 20. So we had Arnie Duncan come out, John Legend come out. So from there, I went to become an elementary principal. And 6 months into my elementary principalship, the way Houston ISD is, the school support officer that hired me, he got a superintendency in Colorado. So I started reporting directly to the chief. And the chief was someone that had this legendary status of, he was an old white guy that from South Carolina that came into Houston, but his history and pedigree, it was just tremendous amount of superintendencies that he left either on his own accord or he left because he was fighting for equity for kids that were Native, kids of color, and just someone I tremendously respected. And he called me into his office one day and said, "Hey, what's next for you?" And I was like, "There is nothing next for me. Like, I am an elementary principal. This is where I want to be. This is great." And I remember what he said distinctly, and he said, "Well, if you think, do you think you could make a bigger impact if you could have bigger kids?" And I was like, "Sure." And I was the principal of Neff Elementary School in Houston ISD that year. I had 800 kids. I was like, "Oh, he might move me to like Piney Point or something that has like 1,200 kids." And that's why he's asking that. And he goes, "Well, if you think you can make a bigger impact and you're not more ambitious, then I think you're being selfish." And I was like, "Oh, that's really complimentary. That was a nice piece." Had that conversation, but I was like, "That's really nice. He thinks highly of me, but I'm happy where I want to be." And it kind of went off. A couple months later, I'm getting married in March to my best friend and wife, who's also an educator that I'd met through the work. And he texts me 3 days before my wedding saying like, "Hey, I'm sorry I can't make it to your wedding. I know you're off on your honeymoon next week. Just have a great time. And the work will be here when you get back." So that was like a Thursday night. We got married on Sunday, I got a phone call before I leave for my honeymoon on Monday that he had passed. And so his name was Dr. Zullinger, Sidney Chip Zullinger. And I just remember I had this like really hard moment with my wife of like, do we go speak at his services? What do we do? And we decided like he'd want us to continue the honeymoon and honor him in a different way. But I kept thinking about him and whether it's guilt or something else.
Right.
I realized like when he came back that I should probably pursue a superintendency. You know, the comment that he had made to me was like, "I want you to say I'm coming for your job because I think you can make a bigger impact and I want you to pursue a superintendency." So that's really what drove me to a superintendency. So after that year, I started applying for high school principalships because I thought that was important. That's where I was given the keys to Sam Houston High School in Texas, and that's where I met Rick. He was the principal of North Forest at that time, and we both were doing some intense turnaround work, and fortunately we had some great successes there. So did that for a couple of years, and then the superintendent in Colorado that actually hired me for my elementary principalship called and said, "Hey, come be an assistant superintendent for me." So I did that for 2 years and worked for Harrison School District 2 in Colorado, and did that for a couple of years, and then was given an opportunity to pursue superintendencies. I never thought I'd end up in Fargo, North Dakota, but the search firm kept saying, look at the district, do your research, and I'm very research oriented. And the community aligned, the values aligned. I did a tremendous amount of research on that school board, and here I am finishing my 7th year as a superintendent at Fargo Public Schools.
So it wasn't that you suddenly watched the movie Fargo.
No.
And then that's what drove you to Fargo, North Dakota.
It wasn't. It wasn't that. It wasn't the fact that I just got sick of the hot weather. It wasn't the fact that the Texans just couldn't keep their quarterback. It wasn't any of that. I was just like, I have no idea why. To be honest, I was like, is Fargo really going to hire an Indian superintendent? Like, is that really going to happen? I come from Texas. I come from turnaround work. I come from a very different environment, and you stereotype Fargo, and honestly, all my stereotypes were wrong. Like, Fargo is a university town. I tell people this all the time. It's all focused around NDSU, and it's a very young population. It's very much a smaller version of Austin, and what Austin is in Texas is how kind of Fargo plays its role within the state of North Dakota.
So one thing I was thinking about when you were describing your journey is you were a high school assistant principal and you went to an elementary.
Yes.
Talk to me, because I experienced that high school background and then became an assistant superintendent in an elementary district in California. Credibility-wise, the teaching and learning, talk to me about that journey, trying to establish that credibility when you got this high school content background.
Yeah, so I did teach elementary special ed, so that helped me a little bit. But I did 2 years of intense turnaround work in high school. Actually, I met my wife breaking up fights at Lee High School in the cafeteria. So I actually remember this story distinctly. When I became an elementary principal, I was sitting with my leadership team, and it was like about to be lunchtime. And, you know, at the elementary school, lunch is like from 10 to like 3 o'clock, depending on which rotation you're going through. But I remember the first lunch was starting, and I just got up in the middle of the meeting, and they're like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Going to go do lunch duty." Like, we got to break up fights. And they're like, this is an elementary school. We don't have fights. You don't do lunch duty.
You may need to open some jeans
Yeah,
or something.
yeah. They're like, the teachers sit with the kids, and we
Put
got
the straw in
parents
the
there.
Capri
Like,
Sun.
keep meeting, man. Like, why are you leaving in the middle of our meeting? You know. So that was a learning experience for me going from the high school to that elementary. But instructionally wise, good instruction is good instruction, right? And we focus on the outcomes, and we focus on our kids and what we're trying to do, and make sure that our kids have holistic development that's important to them. And you keep that the focus, and you're going to be okay.
How did you're a special ed teacher?
Yep.
How did that influence your work as a district superintendent?
I think it's been tremendously helpful. My master's is in special education as well, and I think when I was pursuing administration, I think it was something that was very well received at that time because I had that background. It gave me a sense of comfort with the area where a lot of people just have a lot of insecurities because of legal compliance or liabilities and so forth. So it gave me that, but at the end of the day, I fundamentally believe that good instruction is good instruction, and special ed is just another skill set on how you can be able to teach our educators to scaffold and differentiate instruction. And I think that's beneficial to all learners. So we are one of the school districts that actually used our ESSER funds to incentivize all of our staff in Fargo to get special ed and EL certified,
Nice.
even if that's not what they're teaching, just because we think it's a good practice that's going to be investing in themselves to be able to better scaffold and differentiate instruction for all kids.
That is really cool. I have not heard of that incentive. What a cool opportunity, though, in terms of really meeting the needs of all kids.
Absolutely. And then it also helps our special ed teachers because now you have other people that can kind of take some of that case management off of
That's
you,
right.
push in some of those strategies as well. And I just think and we know that the research is very clear on making sure that we provide more inclusive environments for our students with disabilities. So I think it just made sense all around.
You know, I've always wanted to ask you, when you transitioned to Fargo, right? And so you've had a number of kind of transitions, some more expected than others. How do you gauge what to do during that first year, how fast to go? Like, what was the strategy when you started?
Yeah, that's a great question. My dissertation actually focuses on transitioning to your first superintendency. And one of the things that I highlight in my dissertation is that superintendents get hired on the promise of change, but most superintendents don't make it past their first year because they change too fast.
Yep.
So it's really understanding that balance and navigating where you want to go to. And I think I'm really fortunate that my wife and best friend is in the exact same profession and literally she's 2 years younger than me and been following my same career, doing the same roles that I have. So now she's currently a superintendent as well. So we get to talk shop at home all the time.
So y'all do talk shop?
We do talk shop all the time.
Okay.
And one of the things that we both realize serving two different communities is that it's oftentimes you have to put the system before yourself, right? And you have to recognize that if you're going into a system, you might have all the ambitions and dreams in the world to change the system, but you're only as good as changing the system at the rate of change of what they want to change. And that is so important for anyone going into a new leadership position to recognize it's not about bringing all the things that you promise in the interview. It's bringing all the things that are going to be best for the system based on the rate of change that they're willing to have. Now, if you're not happy with that rate of change, then that's on you, right? You can't be the victim of your own decisions, but you chose to apply for that job. And I think that any job interview should be a two-way interview. So you should know, are they ready to bring in the stuff that you're going to bring in? Are they ready to take that change? So that way you're not one of those individuals promising something at an interview you can't deliver.
Yeah. You know, how did you, because I did not do well with that, right? I was very candid and open on the interview, but what you're saying of this is what you say you wanted, but then when you get into the role and you start making tweaks and changes, we didn't mean that fast, right? Mm-hmm. But how do you, coming from a place like HISD where your hair's on fire, mm-hmm. and you see things happening and you have the autonomy to change really whatever, whenever, how do you taper that back when you see similar things in a different school district, whether it be Fargo or Colorado, what have you, and not have that same mentality of hair on fire? Because that was a struggle for me of getting out of that mode and kind of slowing down a little bit.
You know, so it kind of worked as a double-edged sword for me because being in HISD and doing turnaround work where time is, you just don't have that luxury. A lost kid in a year is a lost kid. And that's the way it is sometimes when we're in a turnaround environment. So you're not thinking about time, you're thinking about outcomes. But then when you move to a more established system like Fargo, where you still have kids that don't have time as an urgency, but the majority of the system is doing very well and is highly successful, you have to realize that the system can actually hurt itself by changing too fast because it's not ready, or you're not going to get the buy-in of your staff. But I think the reason that HIC worked for me is, yes, I'm very outcomes focused and very much wanting to move things fast. But unfortunately, when those large urban systems, you also learn to put your head down and just work because you don't want to be on the chopping block. And you're so fearful of your job sometimes that I actually leverage that to be like, I'm not going to change too fast because I don't want to lose my job. And I remember in Fargo, my admin assistant would be like, why do you think you keep thinking you're going to lose your job? Like, superintendents don't lose their jobs. I'm like, what are you talking about? Superintendents lose their job all the time. But it just showed you a little bit of the Midwest culture, right? Because Fargo, one of the reasons I applied for that job and what attracted me most was the last 6 superintendents had left on their own accord. Each had been there for about 5 years or more at least, and they were still members of that community. So for them, that they're not used to what we're used to, where we saw superintendents just being a revolving door and don't let the door hit you on the way out. So it's understanding those cultural nuances and being able to acclimate accordingly.
When you're reflecting on the work that's going on and what you've led in Fargo, what are you really most proud of?
You know, I think I'm most proud of several things. It's always going to be the students and staff. And our students are just incredible. The day I was hired, our board was given a letter endorsing my candidacy from the student newspapers that did the interviews for the superintendent finalists. And that's probably still one of the things I'm most proud of.
That's awesome.
That is
awesome.
And the students have impacted everything that we've done in Fargo. And my superintendent student cabinets helped us change so many policies. But what I'm most proud of is our FPS philosophies. A couple of years ago, I asked my superintendent students cabinet, raise your hand if you feel a sense of belonging in Fargo. And none of our students of color raised their hand. So we started unpacking that a little bit. And one of the things that a student told us is like, everyone in Fargo is nice. Everyone in Fargo wants to be inclusive, and everyone in Fargo wants to make sure that we have a sense of belonging. But just because you want something doesn't mean that your actions necessarily show it. And I remember exactly what the student shared, and she said, if your bias is implicit, then your advocacy needs to be explicit. And she said, it's not that we don't have teachers that, as me, as a young girl of color, don't care about me, don't want me to feel inclusive. But the reality is that these teachers, they're just non-confrontational. So if they go to a bookstore and they see African-American literature, or Hispanic literature, or Nepali literature, and American literature, they're probably going to pick the safest bet that's least confrontational, not because they want to disenfranchise me as a community, but why take a proactive step that may potentially, especially when public education's under fire, go through this. So we really reflected on that, and we started scouring websites across the nation for school districts and realized when you go to About Us, most school districts, they talk about who they serve, not about who they are. About Us is the demographics that we serve, our community, how many schools we have, what the populations are. So we created our Fargo Public Schools philosophies that really is about us. And what it says is, these are the practices that we want to employ. We believe in restorative practices. We believe in educators' right to not limit information for students. We believe that they know what students can process at what level. We believe in LGBTQ rights and making sure that all students believe that we're setting up. And we do believe that we need to explicitly advocate where we know our community and our system is implicitly biased. Obviously, some of this was all done in the last couple of years before the transition in federal administration, so hopefully that won't impact our practices. But now when you go to our website, we're very clear. And in fact, anyone that signs a contract with us, they also sign, like, these are our philosophies, we believe in that. So we don't have to go that extra step of convincing someone that might not be like-minded in terms of what our approach to education is. It's just very clear, and that's something I'm very proud of.
You know, thinking about the different experiences, and I want to transition just a little bit as we jump into some discussion about where the future of education is going. But let's start with the barriers. What are the barriers that kids are facing in Fargo, and how do they relate to some of the things that you've seen in Texas, differences, similarities, things that you've been able to tease out with your experience?
Yeah, I think the biggest barrier in education is that we don't have clarity in how we define success in education. And I think that allows too many people to define success for us. So the best example I give is there's a million different data points in education, whether student test scores, to sense of belonging, to whatever the case is. And everyone uses every data point to be an evaluatory measure of whether the school system's doing well or the teachers are doing well. And that's just not the way it works. We need to look at health, academics the way we look at health. It's an academic health, and there's many components to whether someone's healthy or not, right? And the example I give is, whenever I'm going to the doctor, regardless of whether I'm going for a weight condition, a skin condition, or or something that's internally wrong with my body, they're going to check my vitals. They're going to check my blood pressure. They're going to check my heart rate every time I go to the doctor. But I don't evaluate my doctor based on the vitals of their patients. Yet we allow teachers to be evaluated based on the scores of their kids. So there's a difference in how we need to teach our community how data is used. There's data that's formative data that's used for the practitioner for their own growth and development. But then there's data that should be used for summative and evaluative data to evaluate a system or a person. And I think we need to have clarity in which data is used for what purpose and how we need to look at how we define success in education. Because you have 14,000 school districts in the nation with each their own respective school boards. They have their own community values. So it's not always an apples and apples comparison, comparing a Houston ISD to a Tomball or an Aldine or a San Ramon County to Santa Barbara County or Santa Clara County. The reason is because their resources are different. So I fundamentally believe that the success of a system should be evaluated not based on specific outcomes that school A might put in 80% of their resources towards where school B only put in 40. I think the success of a school system or any organization should be determined between the alignment between the goals that they're trying to work towards and how much time, energy, and resources they're putting in towards those goals and whether or not that's being successful or not.
So how have you guys defined success then in Fargo? And I think too, the role of getting your board on board with understanding and supporting that vision of what you guys have defined as success.
Yeah, we're doing that work. We've been doing it for the past 2.5 years. We're still in progress, but I think that ultimately we fundamentally believe in systems thinking and strategic alignment in Fargo. So we've incorporated a lot of Peter Sangate's work from the fifth discipline, and we start with cascading goals. So I fundamentally believe that your goals need to be set by the highest authority in your organization, your board. Whatever your board's goals are is how you should evaluate the superintendent, how they should evaluate their cabinet. Those should be the same goals that your school principals are evaluated are and part of the school improvement plan. Then the PLC teams are following in and to the individual students. So like I tell my school district all the time, if what we care about is proficiency in our essential learning outcomes and that's what our board is monitoring for me, then I should be monitoring that for directors, monitoring that for principals, to the point where my son is in first grade. He should come home and be like, my goals for first grade is making sure that I am proficient on these essential learning outcomes. That's where you have alignment in those goals and you're all working in the same direction, to not have those cascading priorities. And not to give too much of a plug, but I am writing a book that's being published on June 1st. Actually, it's finished, but with AASA in Bloomsbury, that is on this very same concept of how do you go through from a systemic standpoint, align all of your priorities and your goals to make sure your entire system is moving in the same direction.
It's that nesting concept, right?
100%.
Yeah, no, totally. That completely resonates with me. When you're thinking about significant challenges, and we think about moving forward with AI.
Yep.
Knowing your experience, what's the one big thing like you would love AI to be able to solve for you as a superintendent? And then I'm thinking, how about for the classroom teacher?
I think AI can change the world. I truly do. And that's not me giving some big open statement. Just for context, I love my job in Fargo Public Schools, and being the superintendent for Fargo has been the greatest honor of my life, and there's no doubt about that. I have made a very difficult decision. I'm leaving the superintendency on June 30th. After 7 years, I'm going to stay in Fargo, be a parent in Fargo. My kids are going to be there. But I'm actually starting a business with my wife that uses AI, automation, and other advanced technologies to help schools, districts, and other mission-driven organizations execute initiatives, solve complex problems, basically get any work that they want. And the reason we're doing that is because we have 2 young kids. My wife is a superintendent, I'm a superintendent. We're not even 40 yet, but we're busy. And we want to be able to spend more time with our kids and be able to do the things that we want to do. And AI is allowing us to do that. So we have somehow naturally just become superintendents that are known to do a lot of AI work. We've been doing a lot of AI work for AASA and other people. And we've realized how much AI can streamline processes, improve outcomes, but also personalize learning for students in a deep way. And we want to be able to provide that for school districts. So next year, we're going to be doing that and being able to support our students. I talked about marginalized learners, and I don't know of any states, if many at all, that have policies that require continuing education for kids that are expelled, right? And a kid can have a student can be expelled from school because of a disciplinary issue, and then we're expecting them to reintegrate a year later when they come back to that school.
Yeah, it never happens.
They've already burnt a relationship with the administration and potentially teachers. Now they're academically behind.
Yeah.
because of a social infraction, and then we expect them to be reintegrated and then come perfect members of our society. That's really hard to do for anyone. So like one of the things our company is going to offer is like, if you expel a kid, hire us. We'll take their schedule. We'll take their state standards. We will align and curriculum map everything that they were doing and then throw it into an LMS for you. So that way you can continue their education. And even if while they're expelled, without putting additional work on your teachers or your staff, we'll make sure they're continuing their education. So when they come back, they haven't fallen back academically. And if you want, we'll even help you write a policy on potentially expunging their record if they finish certain criteria or so forth.
Yeah, I love that.
So then it's not permanently hurting the kid,
You
right?
give them a chance.
So those are the ways that we want to be able to use AI to help schools and districts and leaders save time, become more efficient, and do things a lot differently.
That's awesome. You know, you mentioned Peter Senge, and I remember reading Fifth Discipline in the parable of the frog, right?
Yep.
Is that where we are in education, and we're slowly about to boil because we haven't been nimble enough, and then you throw AI in the mix that's literally changing everything before our eyes, and we're struggling because we don't adapt well, we don't do change well for the most part. What would be some of the things that you would share with our colleagues around the country in terms of the need to be more nimble, more agile when it comes to the latest technology?
You know, I think our colleagues want to be more nimble and agile. I don't know if our K-12 systems have been designed to.
That's right. Yep.
I think that because of the increased public scrutiny on K-12 systems, the limited resources, and the need to always justify everything that you're doing, you don't have the room for R&D, right? We don't have R&D departments the way private sectors does, and that's the reason why our company started. We want to be the company that's on top of all technology for school systems. So, because even if you want to adopt the next new thing, that's a technology integration learning curve in itself. Then you have to go through the first and second order of change within your organization, especially a system like Fargo that's 3,000 employees, to implement that new technology. And by that time, that technology has already changed. So we want to be the company that kind of stays on top of that for you and then just does the work accordingly for you that you can do. But I think it's not a reason that people don't have that desire. I think, again, it goes back to what do you measure? We don't measure goals in schools that allow school systems to fail forward. And if you don't allow school systems to fail forward, then why do you take risks, right? If you're held accountable to not meeting a certain goal or you must execute X practice, where are you incentivized as an employee to be able to try out the next new technology or take a risk and say, hey, it's okay if I don't meet this goal because I don't want to get penalized for it. So until you create that culture, I think that systems are going to struggle to be able to, one, embrace change because it's too risky to do so.
When you look to partner with a technology vendor or those kind of things as a superintendent or your assistant superintendent or cabinet, what attributes are you looking for in a strategic partner?
Yeah, that's a great question. This is one of the things that is really important to me and in the development of my company and even the clients that we serve. It's important to me that you never make technology or artificial intelligence or innovation the goal. The goal should be the goal that you already have. And how can technology be a tool to help you better achieve those goals as a better strategy? So I always tell people, what's the KPI that you're actually trying to work with? And then let's backwards plan from there to create the best strategy accordingly. Because if I make innovation the goal, then I'm trying to promote the practice versus the outcome the practice is going to get to. Mm-hmm. And the way I was trained as an educator was popcorn reading is the worst thing in the world, right? It's a terrible strategy. It's how it's been taught. But I tell my principals this all the time. If I am a principal and I have a teacher that's using every Marzano strategy in the world, all the highly effective strategies, but her kids are not growing or his kids are not growing, and I have another teacher that's doing popcorn reading, but their students are growing by 1.5 years, I actually want to be in the classroom with the Marzano strategies because even though I don't believe in this strategy or I've been told it's terrible, it's working for the kids. I need to monitor the right thing. So it's always about making sure that you're monitoring the right thing. And if you're monitoring the outcome, then you have to allow people to get there however they do. And then your ideas are just another strategy. It's not personal. And if it works, great. If not, let's try something else. And that's what continuous improvement is about.
100%. I couldn't agree more. You know, you've given me so much to think about in a short amount of time. But let's have some fun on the way out. Okay. You're at Fargo, your first year. when did the cold hit you and you're like, this is a different level, of cold?
So Fargo was fantastic at building up psychological safety for me and then just breaking it. That my first year. So I think it's very important to everyone to know. When I was asked to apply for the Fargo Superintendency, I did not press submit on the job application. I made my wife press submit on the job application because I was not going to be responsible for moving our family to Fargo and then having to hear about it 7 years later. But our first year, the weather was fine and it wasn't as bad and it was manageable and it was like, oh, this is fine. Ooh, year 2 came around, we had 50 below. We had a closed school, 50 below. So I have now in my career, there was a day I closed Sam Houston High School in Houston, Texas, because it was going to be more than 90 inside and 100 outside. And now I have closed school because it's 50 below.
Oh my goodness! Can you even picture that in California?
You don't get that in California?
Not in California. I used to get cold weather when I grew up and lived in Eastern Washington. Yes, but not 50 below. Crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, send us out on this one. In 3 years, Rupak Gandhi will be.
In 3 years, hopefully Rupak Gandhi is spending more time with his family and his kids and is helping schools, districts, and other mission-driven organizations use AI, automation, and other advanced technologies to solve problems, execute initiatives, or complete any work that anyone wants them to do. We're here to help our clients, and hopefully we're able to do that.
Hey, thank you so much for joining us. I mean, it's been amazing catching up, and I gravitated towards you as a principal because the way that you thought about things was we were very like-minded, and I remember you sharing a lot of stuff from Sam Houston. I've always been very thankful of that, and I've always followed your career. And Dr. Greer calls every week, and we were talking about you yesterday, as a matter of fact, and so he's very proud of the work that you've done. So thanks for being here and joining us, and for Jeff and myself, man, just continued success, and I know you're going to continue to do great things for students across our country.
Awesome. Well, thank you for doing this. Thank you for having me. It's likewise. I learned from leaders like both of you, and I still remember you were one of the first leaders that I actually thought did something really profound. When Rick was high school principal, he took over a failing school district that Houston ISD merged with, and then he was a high school principal for that. So that's where all of our accountability was. And he instituted something to measure grit for his incoming employees because he knew the work that they had to do. And I just thought that was so profound, and being able to recognize and screen for grit as an employee characteristic that you're looking for. And it made such a big difference in North Forest, and it's something that I still remember and respect from you. So leadership is learning, and learning is universal. So I always say the smartest people in the room are the room itself, and I appreciate conversations like these because it makes us all get better every single day.
Appreciate it. And if you like what you saw and heard, please click like, subscribe, and share accordingly. And thank you to our Power School team for making this all possible. In particular, our CEO, Hardeep Gulati, thank you for everything you do for us.